everybody, welcome back to another Perfectly Pieced block tutorial and 2026 mystery quilt video. Today we're going to be working on the Snowball block for April. I'll go over the block with you. We're going to talk about different layouts, other things you can do with this block. Then we'll stitch out a block, we'll stitch out some borders, we'll make our block for our year-long mystery quilt project, and then at the end I'll talk about some other Kimberbell projects that are going to be coming to the channel. If this is your first time watching one of the mystery quilt videos, you can download the information for free. I'll have a link below. I have this on my own website. There's all the information here. I've gone over it before. We're using our blocks. We're making either a lap quilt or a ladder quilt, or you can make whatever you want with them. It's a way to use the Perfectly Pieced block and borders every month, and at the end of the year we're going to have a quilt, and it also serves as a reference so you'll know all of the blocks, quilting files, and the border files that you got for that year. Let's go ahead and start by talking about the Snowball block. With your Perfectly Pieced subscription you get a number of printouts. We'll quickly go over them. The digital contents is great because it shows you an overview of everything you get. There's a picture of the Snowball block, the layout with the fabric pieces, the custom block by block quilting, which I'm going to be using today, the all over quilting, which is included with your Perfectly Pieced subscription, your border quilting, and a feature project. What's great about the Snowball block is it's fast, it's easy, and it's really versatile. I wrote down a number of things, and then page 2 of this digital contents on the back, I actually made some notes on some of these examples. I'll go over them with you. Some of the things that you can do with the Snowball block, they're great for what's called an I Spy quilt. For the Snowball portion, you could include a fabric, maybe it's cartoon characters, little cars, tractors, farm animals. If you've got a girl, maybe it's like Barbie dolls or different kinds of fluffy animals, and you can make a whole quilt, and then you can play an I Spy game with it. This block is also good to make more masculine quilts. It doesn't have a feminine overtone in the shape. A lot of times people struggle with trying to come up with something to make when they want to make a quilt for their husband or their brother or their male friends or family. This is a great one for this. You could even use flannels and have different colors of flannels for the Snowball portion. It would make a really nice, soft and cuddly quilt, but it's not going to look overly feminine. Because it's easy and fast, I think that it's also great for baby quilts, crib quilts, small quilts, kitty quilts, that kind of thing. This block is going to go together really quick. Let me show you some screenshots I took online of Snowball quilts, and then I'll go over the projects on the back, some of the ideas I have for those. In addition to this block video, I will also make a feature project video. I'm going to try to come up with something a little bit different than the feature project right here so we can see what else we can make with this Snowball block. Let me show you a couple of screenshots I found online. Here's one of an I Spy quilt, and you can see it also has a darker background. You don't have to use white or a light color for your background. You can use a dark background. And here's a picture with a bunch of different colorways, and what's fun about this one right here, you can see the Snowball part is actually the white part, and they use black for the corner pieces. It makes a really interesting looking quilt. Here's a patriotic version. If you want to make something like this where it looks like they're floating, you have a colored snowball and then a white block or a white snowball. You could just make it a white square. And here's a nice picture of a multicolor one. I've also seen some online that are rainbow, and they start with a color here and the rainbow colors progress throughout the quilt. Lots of great ideas online if you'd like to try something different with the Snowball block. The second page of the digital contents gives a bunch of different layouts and colorways. What I did is I made some notes on these bottom two, but you could adapt it to any of them. What this made me think of is family projects. You can embroider mom's name, dad's names, kids' names, pets' names. Maybe you've got the home applique, that free home stitched design. I'll go ahead and link that below for you. Embroider whatever you want in the center, but I thought it'd be cute to have a house in the center. And then again, family members, pet names. You could put an embroidery machine in the center, different sewing themed items around the outside, the 8-inch block in the center, but you can use whichever blocks you want. This is 8-inch and 4 inches around. This would make a great table topper because the centerpiece could go right here in the center. This page is included with your subscription. You can print that out and get different ideas. And it tells you 6-inch blocks, 6 and 4. If it's using 4, there's actually some 2-inch blocks used in this one. It does say no instructions are included for additional projects, but they detail it and they tell you the sizes. It's not too hard to figure out. Today we're going to work with the single block with quilting. We're going to make one block. I'm going to make the 8-inch block, but the procedure is the same for all the different sizes. The file for the 8-inch block is 8.94 inches square, so I'll be using my 9.5 by 14-inch hoop today. The fabrics I have picked out are from Lori Holt's Gentler Times collection. I'm using these fabrics all year long, and as I use them, I'm keeping them separated so I don't use them again. I'm trying to make sure that I mix up the fabrics and I don't continually pull the same fabrics. So these are all fabrics I've used. These are ones I have yet to use. I picked the purple for my Snowball, and for the background, the cream with the purple detail. All of my borders are made using Kona bone. I have a bolt of this. It's kind of a creamy white. And for my quilting today, I picked this color of Floriani thread. One thing I talked about last time in regards to making the mystery quilt was keeping an eye on what I was doing with my borders, and so far everything was pink, so I'm making an effort to not do pink. I don't want to have all pink at the end, even though I like pink. I want to mix it up a little bit. If you don't want to do the single block with the quilting, you can print out the single block instructions and just make a single block with no quilting. This is also what you would do if you want to make a big quilt and then quilt it later with clear blue tiles. Your border files are also included. One thing I noticed that I really like this time, they made a note here. You see the little arrows? This indicates a file is a repeat file. It tells you to see page 2 for more information, but we've been talking about this every month, that even though this says 2 by 10 and this is 2 by 12, you can tell by the picture they're the same size, and that has to do with the repeat. I pulled this up on my embroidery machine. These are both 9.33 inches long. The 14-inch file is actually 14 inches long. So when I stitch out the borders today, I'm bordering an 8-inch block. I need at least 8 inches on the side and then 12 at the top and the bottom. So I'm going to stitch out 2 of these. They're 9.33 inches long, so that's long enough. And then 2 of the 14 for the top and the bottom, and I can trim them down. I starch everything, faultless heavy finish. I'm using Missouri Star 80/20 batting for this project. It is very flat. It's called Best Blend, very similar to Kimberbell project batting. For my stabilizer, I'm using this HBI. It's called No Show Mesh, medium weight. It is extremely similar to Kimberbell's light mesh cutaway. The biggest difference is you really need to be careful when you iron on this. It seems to have a lower melting point than the light mesh cutaway, so don't use the hottest setting on your iron. On the back of the single block with quilting are your cutting instructions. Really easy this month. You need to cut one piece. Piece 1 is your Snowball piece, so I cut one piece 9 by 9, and then pieces 2, 3, 4, and 5 are all the same size. They're all 2.5 by 4, so if you've got a 2.5 inch strip, you can subcut it into 4-inch pieces. That's what I did. I cut 2.5 by 16 and then just cut 4 4-inch pieces. Your batting should be 9 by 9 inch square, and my batting for my borders, it's a little bit over 2.5 inches, and my border strips I've cut at 3 inches. I like them a little bit wider. It's easier for me to work with. I've talked about that before as well. In the materials section, it talks about stabilizer, ultra lightweight, or light mesh. I already showed you my stabilizer, project batting, and optional fusible backing. I'm not using any fusible because I've starched my fabrics, and I do have my paper tape handy. We are ready to go load the file and head over to the machine. Let's stitch out a Snowball block. I'm on a Baby Lock Meridian. Files are on USB. Instructions are right here on my folding metal book stand. I'll have information on that linked below for you. And I have my home sewn magnetic needle minder, which I've really enjoyed using on the metal book stand, especially with more complicated embroidery projects, because as I go through, I can actually slide it and just keep track of where I am in my project. Make sure you've got this picture here next to you. It's going to help you keep track as you work. Let's bring up the file with quilting. You'll see that there's 2 files for each size. You have without quilting and with quilting. Today I'm doing the 8-inch block with quilting. I have my purple thread on my machine. Depending on your fabric, you may want to be using a neutral thread. I've got my no-show mesh stabilizer loaded in my 9.5 by 14 inch tube. The first thing we're going to do is stitch out our batting placement line. I want to cover the placement line with my batting. I do have a piece of tape. I want to make sure it doesn't move when we stitch our tack down. On my machine today, I have a Schmetz Super Non-Stick 8012 needle. It's the one I've been working with for the past couple of videos. It still seems to be working well and doesn't need to be changed, so I'm continuing to work with that, but a regular 7511 embroidery needle is going to work just fine for this, and you want to have some scissors handy. I have my double curve applique and my snips handy. I'll make sure these are linked below. Let's go ahead and stitch our batting tack down line. Trim everything that's outside of the tack down line. Remove the tape if you taped it, and then once it's trimmed, I'm going to put it back on my machine and stitch out the piecing template. Piecing template has stitched out. You can see how easy this one's going to be. We just have the center part, which is fabric 1, and then 2, 3, 4, and 5. So grab your fabric 1. Mine is a 9-inch square. I need to make sure it completely covers the stitch lines. I'm going to have to pull it off. It's sticking to the batting. I went ahead and added a small piece of tape to the top, to the bottom, and on each side. Since this is such a big piece of fabric, I don't want it moving around. We're going to stitch out our trimming and placement line. The trimming and placement line has stitched. You want to trim away this piece of fabric. That's all trimmed. Now my fabric for the corners is this nice cream with the purple print. I did not put fusible on the back. You want to place this right side down, center it along that trimming and placement line. I'm going to add a piece of tape, put my hand underneath to support my project. Make sure it's straight, and then I'll slide this back on my machine and we'll go ahead and stitch the seam. Normally with these blocks, you would want to go ahead and take off the tape, flip it, and press it, but this block is really unique, and this is going to make it even faster to put together. Nothing is going to overlap. I'm going to take the tape off because I'm going to reuse it, but you can actually just leave each of these corners and then press it all at the end. Let's stitch our next trimming and placement line. See how the line right there, it doesn't even come near this other corner or this corner. It's not going to be a problem. Go ahead and trim this away and lay down your next piece of fabric. Make sure it's right side down, centered along that trimming and placement line. I've got my little piece of tape. I'm going to stitch the seam. I'm going to grab my piece of tape and stitch out the next trimming and placement line. Go ahead and do the same thing. Trim this away and get your next piece of fabric right side down, centered along the line, and then we'll stitch the seam. We're going to stitch out our last trimming and placement line. Go ahead and plug in your iron, because once this corner is done, we're going to give it a press before we do our background quilting. Same thing as before. Trim the little corner off, place your piece of fabric right side down, centered along the trimming and placement line, and then stitch out the seam. We're ready to go give this a press. Before you press everything on your ironing board, make sure that you take off all of your tape. You're going to want to fold these out like that and press that. I pressed my block. I also like to pull these out and just add a little piece of tape like that. Since they're kind of touching the embroidery hoop, I want to make sure they stay flat, and we're going to be quilting over them. They're probably fine pressed. I'm just being a little cautious. You could also trim off that little extra piece if you want. Let's put this back on. Stitch out the trimming line, which goes all the way around the block. Now we're ready to stitch out the beautiful custom quilting. We are done at the embroidery machine for this block. Who else has a new favorite block, right? Simple, easy, quick. I love that this is the 8-inch size. You can do any size you want, but if you need to throw together a really quick quilt, you can stitch up a bunch of these blocks sew them together, and you're going to be ready to go. Let's take this over to the table. We need to trim our block. Let's go ahead and get our blocks out of the hoop, and then we're going to trim on the trimming line. I'm going to cut away my excess stabilizer. If it's a big enough piece, I save it and I use it for other projects. Got my OmniGrid rotating cutting mat. Kimberbell also makes a rotating cutting mat that's square. I'll link those below for you. 8.5-inch orange pop ruler. This is an easy block to do this with. In case you're new to using the orange pop rulers, you line them up so that trimming line is right there on the inside of the ruler. Right-handed people cut on this side, left-handed people cut on this side. You hold it down, watch your fingers. You start down here, which is a little bit past the end of your block, all the way up and pass the stitch line here into the top. Slide your blade as far over to the side as possible, and then go all the way around and trim your block. As I mentioned at the beginning, I'm going to put on the side borders first. They're going to be shorter, and then the borders across the top and the bottom, that will be longer. We're going to go stitch out the side borders. If you're stitching the 8-inch block like I am, remember the 2x10 and the 2x12 are both 9.33 inches long. That has to do with the repeat of the pattern. I'm going to go ahead and bring up the 2x10. You can see right up here, 9.33 by 2.5 wide. Going to set and then hit edit. I'm going to use what's called the border duplicate key. I've gone over these duplicate keys before. We want to add it to the side. So slide that one over. Add one to the side. Space it out. If you need to see this slower, go to the earlier videos, especially the first block, the teacup block. I walk through this all really slowly. These are ready to stitch out. I'm going to leave the purple thread on my machine. I have my 8x12 hoop on for these because these are shorter, and we're only stitching individual borders. I will link a video below. If you're working on a project where you have to join the borders, you can watch that and learn how to do that. We're going to start with our batting placement line. Placement lines have stitched. I've got a couple pieces of batting, more than long enough, which is fine because we trim them after we tack them down. Make sure to cover the placement line. I would add a piece of tape at least at the top, and then you can watch it the rest of the way down, or you can add tape at the bottom. I usually add a small piece at the bottom as well, but I do sit here and keep an eye on it. And I'm going to tape this one down, and then we'll stitch out the tack down. Once you've stitched out the tack down, you want to trim away the extra. You can see I have plenty for my next set of strips. Next, we're going to stitch out the fabric placement line. I like to stitch this out in a visible thread. When we go to trim our borders, if you flip it around to the back, it's the exact width you need to trim by using the fabric placement line. From the front, once we stitch the fabric placement line and place our fabric and tack it down, you can no longer see that line. I did mention that last time, but worth mentioning again, and you'll see why when we trim the borders. Let's stitch out the fabric placement line. Grab your border fabric strip. These I cut at 3 inches wide. This is why. It's so much easier to make sure I've got that fabric placement line covered than if you cut those at 2.5. Now the tack down line will stitch right here in between the batting tack down and the fabric placement line. So if you've cut your strip at 2.5, it'll work. It's just a little tight. You want to keep an eye on it. I'm going to go ahead and place that. We're going to tape it. And your strip can be longer than the piece that you're stitching, especially if you're doing end-to-end quilting. You can see this is much longer. I'll just cut off what I don't need for this project. I'm going to go ahead and add some tape to the bottom, and then I'll tape my other strip and we'll stitch the tack down line. The fabric is all tacked down. Let's stitch our quilting. These are all done. What I'm going to do is trim away the extra, and I'm going to stitch my longer borders off camera, but we'll go ahead and trim these together. Let's take this over to the table. I've got all my borders ready to go. The 2 larger borders, the 2 smaller borders. Let's cut one of the smaller ones together. I'm going to flip it over to the back. I have a 2.5 inch wide ruler. You'll see when I lay it down, it lines up with the outside stitch line. This is your fabric placement line, which if you go to the front, you can no longer see. See that? You don't want to line up and cut here and here, because instead of 2.5, you'll end up with 2.25. If you want to trim from the front, you have to trim 1/8 of an inch away on this side and 1/8 of an inch away on that side. That's why I like flipping it to the back. It took me a while to figure that one out. Now that I know it, it's so much easier. I'm going to line up my ruler. I can actually use my rotating cutting mat for this too. You also have a stitch line going across the top and the bottom. You can pick a line on your ruler and line it up with that. Make sure it's straight. And that'll help you make sure that you're straight with the line here on this side and the line on that side. Usually, no matter how careful I am, I still manage to trim them a little bit crooked, but you really can't tell in the end. Let's go ahead and trim. And I'm just going to trim the sides right now. I'll trim the top and the bottom after I attach it to my block. Let's see how I did. Yep, I trimmed it crooked. I can see that. That's all right. You can see I've got a little more space here than down here and a little more space here than down here. So my ruler was tilted a little bit. I need to cut one more short one and then the 2 long ones. I'll go ahead and do that off camera, and then we'll talk about attaching our borders. Let's look at our block and our borders. These are directional. Do you see that? Right now they're going the same way. If I flip it, they're going different directions because the leaves point a certain direction. So you want to pay attention to that unless it doesn't bother you. What I would say, you've got several options on how to do this. You can do 2 pointing up, 2 pointing the same way on the other sides. You can do 1 up, 1 down, 1 up, 1 down. What I think I'm going to do is trace it around in a circle. So this is going up, this one will go that way, this one will go down, and then this one will go that way. So when the block is done, the vine is going in the same direction on all the sides. That's how I'm going to attach mine. I'm not really worried with these where I want to center it. Like with the teacups, we had, full little teacups, and how do you want to center it? These are just leaves. I'm going to make sure that I'm passed on either end. Same here. That looks good. I'll go ahead and clip it, sew with a 1/4 inch seam, and then I'll press these out. In case this is anyone's first video, I thought I would show this. I do press these out. I just want to go that direction. You can see they extend beyond the block. I need to get a ruler, and we need to even that off before we put on the top and the bottom. Just grab this one right here. You can line up along the edge of your block and then pick a straight line on your ruler. Line it up along the seam right there that you just sewed. You know that that's straight. It's a good way to double check and make sure that everything is lined up where you want it to be. And then trim off the extra. And see, I got a little bit of my block there, but that's okay. Now it cut off some of the high spots so it's nice and even. Let's do the other side. Same thing. Go ahead and we'll line a straight line up with our seam. Make sure that's straight. And then I'm just feeling for the top of my block. I'm looking here to see if that's straight. Looks pretty good. Just a little bit off the top of that block. Now I'm ready to attach my top and my bottom borders. And since I've rotated the block, I want to double check the orientation of the vines. Up, over, down, and over. So I can attach these, and then we'll trim and be done. Here's the back of the block. You can see this seam right here, as I was sewing, it got flipped. If that happens to you, what I like to do is just snip it like that, and then that's going to help it lay a little bit flatter. It works better with regular fabric and not with the stabilizers and all the batting. So it's still sewn, but now I can take it back to my iron and press it, and it makes this little part here a little bit flatter instead of having the bump where it folded over. Let's flip this to the front, and we have to trim the 2 top and bottom borders. I'm going to do the same thing I did on the other side. Here's my finished snowball block. This was really easy, wasn't it? You could make some of these big blocks, the 8-inch, or if you don't have a hoop big enough to make the 8-inch, the 6-inch, you could crank out a bunch of these and have a quilt in no time. And what's great is that it comes with this quilting, So all you have to do is sew your blocks together, put your backing on, and you stitch in the ditch, bind it, and you're done. Thank you for joining me for this month's Perfectly Pieced Mystery Quilt block and block tutorial. Coming up very soon, my fabric kit just got mailed out to me yesterday, Sippin' on Sunshine. I'll do an unboxing of the fabric kit. We'll look at the embellishments. We'll look at everything involved with this project and come up with a schedule to get this one made. And also, we'll be working on Home Sewn, the May mini quilt. I already have a video showing the fabric pull for this. I'll link that below. I'm going to be filming that next because the fabric for this has not yet arrived. So hopefully by the time this is all filmed, edited, and posted, my fabric kit will be here and we can get started on our Sippin' on Sunshine, and I'll come up with another fun project to do with our Snowball block. Thank you for watching. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Any comments or questions, leave them for me below the video. Let me know how your mystery quilt is coming along. I do have a Facebook group. You can join the Facebook group. The link is below. If after watching my video you'd like to sign up for Perfectly Pieced, purchase Sippin' on Sunshine, Home Sewn, or any other Kimberbell product, please consider using my links below. I do get a small commission, but more importantly, it lets Kimberbell know that people are watching my content. Thank you again for watching. See you next time.